Have you ever watched a movie so cold, cruel, and morally rotten that it felt like evidence you were never supposed to find? Hollywood celebrates polished noir legends, but its darkest films were often cheap, buried, and almost forgotten. These 19 classics offer no safe heroes and very little hope. They show dirty cops, frightened witnesses, broken veterans, and ordinary people making one terrible choice after another. If you enjoy discovering forgotten movies, press the like button and subscribe to the channel, because the films near the top of this countdown become almost unbelievably dark. Number 19. The Window, 1949. Most children are afraid that adults will not listen to them. In The Window, that childhood fear becomes a full nightmare. Tommy Woodry is a young boy living with his parents in a crowded New York apartment building. Tommy has a powerful imagination, but he also has a habit of telling stories that are not true. His parents have heard so many wild claims that they no longer react when he warns them about danger. One hot night, Tommy sleeps on the fire escape. Through an upstairs window, he witnesses his neighbors, the Kellersons, attacking a sailor inside their apartment. Tommy understands exactly what he has seen, but nobody believes him. His mother even forces him to apologize to the very people he is accusing. That apology quietly tells the Kellersons that Tommy knows their secret. The movie then turns an ordinary apartment building into a giant trap. Staircases, rooftops, dark rooms, and fire escapes become more frightening because Tommy has nowhere safe to run. The adults who should protect him repeatedly deliver him back into danger. The most memorable section comes when Tommy is taken into a condemned building. Broken floors and empty rooms surround him while the criminals search through the darkness. The building feels ready to collapse, creating the impression that the entire city has abandoned this child. Number 18. The Sniper, 1952. The Sniper does something many crime films of its period avoided. Instead of presenting evil as stylish or mysterious, it presents it as lonely, sick, and painfully ordinary. Eddie Miller is a delivery driver living alone in San Francisco. He appears quiet and almost invisible, but he is struggling with dangerous thoughts that he cannot control. At different points, Eddie seems to understand that he needs help. He deliberately burns his hand, visits a hospital, and leaves signs that someone should notice him. Nobody truly does. The police begin searching for Eddie after women are targeted across the city. Lieutenant Frank Kafka slowly realizes that the crimes are not connected by money, robbery, or personal revenge. The attacker is choosing strangers, which means almost any woman could become the next target. One of the movie's most shocking scenes involves a nightclub performer played by Marie Windsor. She leaves a bar and pauses near a large window. Eddie fires from a distant rooftop, and the force sends her crashing through the glass. The moment is fast, blunt, and filmed without glamour. Yet the film's darkest scene may be its final one. After the police finally corner Eddie, he does not deliver a grand speech or behave like a movie monster. He simply sits there with a tear running down his face. For one brief moment, he looks less like a criminal mastermind and more like a man who had been quietly collapsing for years. Before we continue, comment below and tell us which forgotten film noir disturbed you more than any famous horror movie. And remember to like, share, and subscribe, because number 1 ends with one of the most frightening crowd scenes in classic Hollywood. Number 17. The Prowler, 1951. The frightening thing about The Prowler is not that a criminal enters a woman's home. It is that the policeman sent to protect her becomes the real threat. Susan Gilvray reports seeing someone outside her house. Police officers Webb Garwood and Bud Crocker arrive to investigate. Nothing is found, but Webb returns later without his partner. He is attracted to Susan, who is lonely because her husband works nights as a radio announcer. Every evening, Susan hears her husband's voice coming through the radio while she spends more time with Webb. Their affair begins inside the house her husband paid for, making every room feel dishonest. Webb is not motivated only by romance. He wants Susan's comfortable life, her money, her home, and the successful future he believes the world denied him. He begins planning a crime that will allow him to take her husband's place. Webb eventually becomes the Prowler himself, creating a false emergency that gives him an excuse to fire his weapon. Susan is pulled into the cover-up before she fully understands what he has done. The final section moves to a deserted desert settlement where Susan is preparing to give birth. Webb hides among broken buildings and empty streets while police close in. The location resembles a ghost town built from his failed dreams. Van Heflin's performance makes Webb deeply uncomfortable to watch. He can sound friendly, wounded, and reasonable, even while controlling everyone around him. Number 16. The Chase, 1946. Some noir films feel like bad dreams. The Chase feels like a dream that keeps changing its rules while you are trapped inside it. Chuck Scott is a struggling war veteran wandering through Miami. When he finds a wallet filled with money, he returns it to its owner instead of keeping it. Unfortunately, the owner is Eddie Roman, a wealthy gangster whose calm smile hides a cruel personality. Impressed by Chuck's honesty, Eddie hires him as a chauffeur. Chuck soon meets Eddie's wife, Lorna. She lives in luxury, but behaves like a prisoner. During drives near the ocean, she looks across the water and dreams of escaping to Havana. Chuck becomes emotionally attached to her and agrees to help her leave. Their escape appears to work. They reach Havana, move through crowded clubs and shadow-covered streets, and briefly believe they are free. Then Lorna is attacked, Chuck is blamed, and the entire story seems to fall apart. But the chase suddenly pulls reality away from the audience. Events may have been memories, nightmares, or warnings created inside Chuck's troubled mind. The story begins again, but small details have changed. Chuck now has a chance to prevent the tragedy he has already experienced. The film's most famous quality is this dreamlike shift. Miami and Havana do not feel like real locations. They feel like rooms inside a damaged mind, connected by fear instead of logic. Steve Cochran makes Eddie frightening because he rarely needs to raise his voice. Peter Lorre is equally effective as Eddie's watchful assistant. Number 15. Nightfall, 1956. Nightfall begins with a man who seems suspicious because he is afraid of almost everything around him. Jim Vanning is a commercial artist living under a false sense of freedom. He moves carefully through Los Angeles, watching strangers and avoiding questions. When he meets fashion model Marie Gardner, he wants to trust her, but he has spent too long expecting danger. Jim's fear began during a winter fishing trip in Wyoming. He and his friend, Dr. Gersten, crossed paths with two bank robbers named John and Red. Red is reckless and cruel, while John is quieter but equally dangerous. The criminals attempt to steal the men's car and remove them as witnesses. Jim survives the encounter and accidentally escapes with the robbers' money. He hides the cash in the snow, but cannot later remember its exact location. Now, the criminals are hunting him, the police suspect him, and everyone believes Jim knows where the missing money is. Director Jacques Tourneur moves between sunny Los Angeles and the frozen wilderness. That contrast makes the flashbacks feel even colder. The city offers crowds but no safety, while the open snow offers nowhere to hide. The most memorable sequence comes near the end, when the characters return to Wyoming. A massive snowplow cuts through the landscape as Red chases Jim and Marie. The machine is loud, unstoppable, and almost mechanical in the way it delivers justice. Brian Keith gives John an unusual amount of humanity, but Rudy Bond's Red is pure, uncontrolled danger. Number 14. The Unsuspected, 1947. What could be safer than listening to a respected radio host tell crime stories from inside his beautiful mansion? In The Unsuspected, the storyteller may understand crime because he is creating it himself. Victor Grandison is the elegant host of a popular true crime radio program. His voice is smooth, intelligent, and trusted by thousands of listeners. Inside his home, however, strange events are beginning to surround his family. The story opens during a storm when Grandison's secretary is found dead. Her death appears to be self-inflicted, but the room contains small clues suggesting that someone carefully arranged the scene. Grandison's wealthy young ward, Matilda, was also believed to have died during a voyage. When questions about her fate begin to surface, an unknown young man arrives at the mansion claiming a personal connection to her. From that moment, the household becomes a maze of false identities, hidden recordings, blackmail, and suspicious accidents. Everyone seems to be watching someone else. One of the movie's strongest scenes uses Grandison's own recording equipment against him. Voices captured on records begin revealing information that the characters believed had disappeared. The technology that made Grandison famous slowly becomes evidence. Claude Rains is perfectly cast because his voice can sound warm and threatening at the same time. Grandison does not behave like a street criminal. He behaves like a director arranging actors inside his private drama. Number 13. The Mob, 1951. In The Mob, one police officer enters the docks undercover and discovers that almost everyone around him may be pretending. Detective Johnny D'Amico witnesses a man being shot on a rainy street. The attacker identifies himself as a police officer, causing Johnny to hesitate long enough for him to escape. Johnny's superiors are angry, but they also see an opportunity. A criminal organization has taken control of the waterfront. Workers are frightened, witnesses disappear, and the people giving orders remain hidden. Johnny is given a new identity and sent onto the docks as a longshoreman named Tim Flynn. His first challenge is surviving the workers. These men do not trust strangers, and some of them are connected to the organization Johnny is investigating. He must appear tough without attracting too much attention. Broderick Crawford makes Johnny feel heavy, tired, and believable. He is not a polished undercover hero. He is a working detective entering an environment where one wrong word could reveal everything. The strongest scenes take place inside warehouses and loading areas. Crates, hooks, chains, and narrow passages fill the screen. Men appear from behind stacks of cargo, making the docks feel like an industrial maze. Johnny meets dangerous figures, played by Ernest Borgnine, Neville Brand, and Richard Kiley. Each man might be a criminal, an informant, or another person trapped by fear. The investigation eventually reveals that the organization's power reaches far beyond the workers committing crimes on the waterfront. Number 12. 99 River Street, 1953. Ernie Driscoll once dreamed of becoming a boxing champion. Now he drives a taxi at night while listening to other people describe the successful man he failed to become. His wife, Pauline, is tired of their small apartment and limited future. Unknown to Ernie, she is planning to leave with Victor Rollins, a criminal carrying stolen diamonds. When Victor realizes the diamonds are difficult to sell, he turns against Pauline. Ernie soon becomes connected to her disappearance, and the police begin treating him as the obvious suspect. Ernie's only possible ally is Linda James, an actress who is also desperate for a career breakthrough. Unfortunately, Linda first earns his trust through one of Noir's cruelest tricks. She tells Ernie that she has attacked a man inside a theater and begs him to help her. Ernie enters the dark building and sees what appears to be the aftermath of a terrible crime. He risks everything to protect Linda, only to discover that the entire event was a performance designed to impress a producer. For Ernie, it is not entertainment. It is another humiliation. John Payne plays him like a man carrying years of anger in his shoulders. When he finally begins fighting back, every punch feels connected to all the disappointments he has swallowed. The final struggle around the riverfront brings boxing and crime together. Ernie must use the ability that once failed to make him famous just to remain alive. 99 River Street is loud, sweaty, and emotionally aggressive. Its characters do not slowly fall into darkness. They are shoved into it, betrayed by the people who were supposed to love or trust them. By this point, Noir has turned homes, streets, theaters, and workplaces into traps. The next film makes an entire train feel like a locked room. Number 11. The Narrow Margin, 1952. A train is supposed to take passengers toward a destination. In the narrow margin, it feels like every mile carries the characters closer to an ambush. Detective Walter Brown and his partner are assigned to protect a gangster's widow who has agreed to testify before a grand jury. Before the train journey begins, Brown's partner is killed, leaving him alone with the difficult witness. The woman, played by Marie Windsor, is loud, sarcastic, and openly hostile. She does not trust Brown, and he does not hide his dislike for her. Unfortunately, criminals have boarded the same train and are searching every compartment. Most of the film unfolds inside narrow corridors, tiny sleeping rooms, and crowded dining cars. Brown cannot call for help or leave the train. He also cannot be sure which passenger is working for the gang. A friendly mother traveling with her young son becomes involved, increasing the danger and creating doubts about the witness Brown is protecting. The film then reveals that appearances inside this train are carefully designed to mislead both Brown and the audience. One of the best moments uses a reflection in a train window to expose an attacker. The glass shows information the characters cannot safely turn around to see. Director Richard Fleischer filmed the picture quickly, but that low-budget speed helps it. There is almost no wasted movement. The sound of wheels striking the track continues beneath conversations, creating a mechanical heartbeat. Charles McGraw's rough voice and hard expression make Brown appear built for this assignment, yet the confined space slowly wears him down. The narrow margin understands that suspense does not require a huge city. Sometimes all it needs is one moving train, several false identities, and no safe place to stand. Number 10. He Walked by Night, 1948. Long before television police dramas turned investigations into weekly entertainment, He Walked by Night showed police work as slow, technical, and frighteningly uncertain. Richard Basehart plays Roy Morgan, an intelligent burglar operating across Los Angeles. Roy steals electronic equipment, changes his appearance, uses false names, and understands police methods well enough to remain several steps ahead. When a patrol officer stops him on a dark street, Roy responds quickly and escapes. The officer later dies, turning the investigation into a citywide search. Roy is not surrounded by a gang. He lives quietly with his dog and rarely shows emotion. That isolation makes him more disturbing. He appears to need almost nothing from other human beings. One famous sequence shows Roy removing a bullet from his own body. He works alone inside a bathroom, using basic medical tools while the camera watches his face. The scene is tense because Roy treats his own injury like another technical problem to solve. Police officers gather witness descriptions, create a composite image, examine stolen equipment, and slowly identify patterns. The film uses a semi-documentary style, but John Alton's cinematography fills ordinary locations with deep shadows. The climax takes place inside the Los Angeles storm drainage system. Roy moves through enormous concrete tunnels, while officers enter from different directions. Flashlights cut through the darkness, footsteps echo against the walls, and every passage appears identical. Roy spent the entire movie using the city as his private hiding place. In the tunnels, that city finally closes around him. He walked by night, is dark, because its criminal is not wild or careless. He is patient, practical, and almost invisible until the machinery of an entire police department begins narrowing the space around him. Number 9. Crime Wave, 1953. The opening minutes of Crime Wave feel less like a studio production and more like someone secretly filmed a real robbery. 3 criminals enter a gas station late at night. The robbery goes wrong. A police officer is killed, and one gang member is badly wounded. He escapes to the apartment of Steve Lacey, a former prisoner who has worked hard to build an honest life. Steve is married to Ellen, has a job, and wants no connection to his old associates. But the injured man knows Steve's history. Soon the rest of the gang arrives and begins using Steve's home as a hiding place. Detective Lieutenant Sims, played by Sterling Hayden, does not believe Steve has truly changed. Sims is harsh, suspicious, and almost eager to prove that a former criminal will always return to crime. This traps Steve between 2 forces. The gang threatens his wife if he refuses to cooperate, while the police threaten his freedom if he does. Director Andre Detoth filmed across real Los Angeles locations, often using available light. Streets, apartments, hospitals, and banks feel unusually plain. That realism removes the comfortable distance usually created by studio sets. The opening gas station scene is one of the film's strongest moments. There is no long introduction and no glamorous planning. The crime begins quickly and collapses just as quickly. Later, a bank sequence was filmed inside a real branch during a single night, adding to the film's raw atmosphere. Crime Wave is not about a master criminal. It is about how difficult it is for someone with a record to escape his past. Steve has changed, but neither the police nor the criminals are willing to believe him. Number 8. The Setup, 1949. The setup takes place over roughly the same amount of time it takes to watch it. That creates the terrible feeling that nothing can pause the clock or save its aging boxer. Bill Stoker Thompson has spent years fighting in small arenas. He is 35, tired, and losing more matches than he wins. Yet Stoker believes tonight could be different. His wife, Julie, begs him not to fight. She has watched him return home injured too many times and understands that one victory will not repair their future. What Stoker does not know is that his manager has accepted money from a gangster. Stoker is expected to lose. The manager is so confident in Stoker's weakness that he does not even tell him about the arrangement. Inside the arena, the audience behaves like a hungry mob. People who appear respectable outside shout for punishment once the fight begins. Robert Wise repeatedly cuts to their faces, showing laughter, excitement, and disappointment whenever the boxers slow down. The match is filmed with remarkable physical detail. Stoker absorbs hit after hit but refuses to remain down. His younger opponent becomes tired, and the criminals watching from the crowd realize that their plan may fail. When Stoker finally wins, there is no celebration waiting for him. He is followed into a dark alley where the men behind the fixed fight demand payment. Robert Ryan makes Stoker's pride both heroic and tragic. Fighting honestly may be the only thing he has left, even if it destroys the career he is trying to protect. The setup exposes the ugliness surrounding the ring. The fighters suffer, the managers trade them, the gangsters profit, and the crowd purchases a ticket to enjoy the damage. Number 7. Act of Violence, 1948. Frank Enley appears to have built the perfect post-war life. He owns a successful business, has a loving wife, and is respected as a returning war hero. Then a limping man named Joe Parkson arrives in town. Joe served with Frank in a prisoner of war camp. He carries physical injuries from the war, but his anger is directed at something Frank has hidden from everyone around him. During captivity, Frank learned about an escape plan. Under extreme pressure, he gave information to the guards, believing he could protect himself and perhaps control the consequences. Instead, The attempted escape ended in disaster. Joe survived, and now wants Frank to answer for the men who did not. Frank runs from his home, his wife, and the heroic identity he created. The farther he travels into the city at night, the more his respectable appearance falls apart. One of the film's most powerful sections follows Frank through dark streets, tunnels, bars, and back rooms. He meets Pat, a tired woman played by Mary Astor, who understands that desperation makes people easy to exploit. Criminals offer Frank a way to remove Joe permanently. Frank does not fully agree, but his weakness allows the plan to begin moving without him. Robert Ryan plays Joe like a damaged force of nature, while Van Heflin makes Frank frightened, ashamed, and painfully human. The movie refuses to offer a simple villain. Joe's desire for revenge is understandable but dangerous. Frank's betrayal was terrible, but it occurred under conditions most people cannot imagine. Act of violence is dark, because the war did not end when the soldiers returned home. It followed them into their marriages, businesses, memories, and nightmares. Number 6. The Hitchhiker, 1953. Two friends leave their families for a quiet fishing trip. Their mistake is stopping the car for one stranger. Roy Collins and Gilbert Bowen pick up Emmett Myers on an empty road. Within moments, Myers reveals that he is an escaped criminal who has already attacked other drivers. Myers forces the men to continue toward Mexico. He insults them, threatens their families, and creates small competitions designed to turn them against each other. He wants control, but he also appears to enjoy watching ordinary men lose their confidence. One of Myers' eyes cannot close completely. This means Roy and Gilbert cannot tell whether he is sleeping. Even during the night, his open eye appears to be watching them. In a memorable desert scene, Myers forces one hostage to hold an object while the other fires toward it. The scene is disturbing, not because of what happens, but because Myers transforms friendship into a weapon. A small mistake could make either man responsible for the other's death. Director Ida Lupino keeps the story simple. Much of the film takes place inside a car or across empty desert roads. The open landscape should provide freedom, yet it only proves how far the hostages are from help. William Tallman gives Myers no charm. He is not a romantic outlaw or criminal genius. He is cruel, suspicious, and emotionally empty. The story was inspired by the real crimes of William Cook, although details were altered for the screen. The Hitchhiker may be one of noir's purest studies of fear. Roy and Gilbert are not detectives or gangsters. They are normal men who make one polite decision and suddenly discover that their lives belong to someone else. Number 5. Raw Deal, 1948. Few film noir villains appear as comfortable with cruelty as Rick Coyle in Raw Deal. Joe Sullivan is serving time for a crime connected to Rick's organization. Joe accepted the punishment believing Rick would eventually arrange his release and reward his loyalty. Instead, Rick organizes an escape designed to fail. He hopes Joe will be killed before reaching freedom. Joe survives with help from Pat Regan, the woman who loves him. During the escape, they take Ann Martin hostage. Ann is a legal worker who had visited Joe in prison and believed he could still change. The three travel together while police search for them and Rick's men close in. Pat represents Joe's criminal past, while Ann represents the possibility of another life. Pat slowly realizes that Joe may be moving emotionally toward Ann. Claire Trevor narrates parts of the story as Pat, but her voice often sounds distant, almost as though she is already remembering something she has lost. The film's most infamous moment belongs to Raymond Burr as Rick. During a party, a woman accidentally spills a drink. Rick responds by throwing flaming brandy toward her face. The camera places the audience directly in the path of the fire, making the act feel sudden and personal. Rick's casual reaction is even colder than the attack. John Alton's photography fills rooms with fog, darkness, and sharp beams of light. Even daylight feels contaminated. Raw Deal tells us that loyalty means nothing inside this criminal world. Joe sacrificed his freedom for Rick. Pat risks everything for Joe, and nearly everyone is rewarded with betrayal. The title does not describe one event. It describes the rules governing every relationship in the film. Number 4. Decoy, 1946. Decoy is so shamelessly strange that it sometimes feels less like a studio movie and more like a forbidden crime magazine brought to life. Margot Shelby wants $400,000 stolen by her boyfriend, Frank Olens. The problem is that Frank is sitting on death row and refuses to reveal where he hid the money. Margot develops an unbelievable plan. After Frank's execution, his body will be taken to a corrupt doctor who possesses a drug capable of reviving him. Once Frank returns, Margot will force him to reveal the hiding place. The plan actually works. Frank wakes on the operating table shouting that he is alive. For a brief moment, the movie crosses from noir into mad scientist horror. But Margot is not interested in the miracle. She only wants the cash. From there, she betrays nearly every person who helped her. Jean Gilly plays Margot with a smile that can switch from charming to cold within seconds. The film's most notorious scene comes when Margot removes one of her partners from the plan by striking him with a car. She then reverses direction to make certain he cannot follow her. The camera does not need graphic detail. Her expression tells us everything. Even the corrupt men around Margot appear surprised by how far she is willing to go. The story is told partly through flashback, as Margot explains events to police officer Joe Portugal. Yet she continues lying, even when her situation appears hopeless. Decoy has no moral center. Love is fake. Science is misused. Loyalty is temporary. And life itself can apparently be restarted, only so another betrayal can occur. It is cheap, fast, cruel, and unforgettable. The final 3 films remove almost every remaining trace of glamour. These stories are about manipulation, shame, and crowds becoming more dangerous than individuals. Number 3. The Devil Thumbs a Ride, 1947. The Devil Thumbs a Ride lasts barely more than an hour, yet it contains enough lies, panic, and manipulation for a much larger movie. Steve Morgan attacks a theater cashier and escapes with stolen money. Standing beside a dark road, he raises his thumb and waits for an innocent driver. Jimmy Ferguson stops for him. Jimmy is a friendly salesman returning home after a night of celebration. He talks too much, trusts too easily, and has no idea that the passenger sitting beside him is a wanted criminal. During the drive, they pick up 2 women. Steve immediately begins controlling the conversation, changing names, inventing stories, and quietly placing suspicion on everyone except himself. When police create a roadblock, Steve convinces the group to spend the night at an empty beach house. The house becomes a pressure chamber where his lies begin colliding. Lawrence Tierney is frightening because Steve rarely behaves as though he is in danger. He smiles, jokes, and studies people until he discovers exactly how to use their weaknesses. Jimmy's kindness becomes particularly painful. Every time he tries to help Steve, he makes his own situation worse. Steve begins arranging evidence so police will believe Jimmy committed the original crime. The strongest scenes involve Steve switching between charm and threat without warning. The other characters sense that something is wrong, but they remain socially polite for too long. That is the film's real nightmare. Steve does not force his way into the car. He is invited inside because Jimmy wants to be helpful. The Devil Thumbs a Ride turns a simple roadside favor into a journey toward disaster. It suggests that evil does not always chase its victims. Sometimes it waits calmly for someone decent enough to stop. Number 2. Moonrise, 1948. In most noir films, the hero is haunted by something he did. Danny Hawkins is haunted by something his father did before Danny was old enough to understand it. Danny grows up in a small southern community where everyone remembers that his father was executed for killing a doctor. Other children torment him, adults whisper about him, and every mistake is treated as proof that he inherited his father's nature. The opening montage shows Danny's childhood through shadows, hanging imagery, and repeated humiliation. Before the adult Danny even appears, the audience understands that the town has already decided what kind of man he will become. As an adult, Danny is bullied by Jerry Sykes, who uses the family history to provoke him. During a fight in the woods, Jerry dies. Danny panics and hides what happened. The rest of the story follows Danny's growing guilt. He becomes close to Gilly Johnson, the woman Jerry had been seeing, but their relationship only increases his fear of exposure. A sheriff begins putting the evidence together, while Danny retreats deeper into the swampy landscape. Water, mud, trees, and darkness seem to reflect his confused mind. Dane Clark plays Danny as angry but not evil. He has spent his entire life being told that violence exists inside him, and one terrible moment appears to confirm everyone's judgment. The film's most haunting idea is that Danny may have been pushed toward the identity the town created for him. He is responsible for his actions, but the community also helped construct his shame. Moonrise is not simply about escaping the law. It is about escaping the belief that a parent's worst act determines a child's entire future. That makes its darkness deeply personal. Number 1. Try and Get Me, 1950. The darkest film on this list does not begin with a gangster. It begins with an unemployed husband trying to buy small gifts for his family. Howard Tyler cannot find steady work. His wife attempts to remain supportive, but bills are increasing and Howard feels ashamed each time he returns home without money. He meets Jerry Slocum, a loud, confident criminal who appears to have everything Howard lacks. Jerry has cash, stylish clothes, and no respect for rules. Howard agrees to help with small robberies. At first, the crimes seem almost easy. He brings money home, restores his confidence, and hides the truth from his family. Then Jerry proposes kidnapping a wealthy young man. The plan collapses, the victim dies, and Howard realizes he has crossed into a world he cannot escape. The police capture both men, but the movie's true horror begins after their arrest. A newspaper reporter turns the case into public entertainment. Headlines become more emotional. Crowds gather outside the jail, and anger spreads faster than facts. Ordinary citizens begin speaking as though punishment belongs to them. The climactic sequence follows a mob storming the jail. Windows break, officers lose control, and hundreds of people move with one shared purpose. Howard and Jerry wait inside, listening as the crowd comes closer. There is almost no glamour left. The mob is not presented as justice. It is presented as a living force created by fear, excitement, and irresponsible reporting. Cy Enfield based the story on real events and used noir to attack unemployment, media manipulation, and public rage. Try and Get Me feels illegal to watch because it refuses to provide emotional safety. Howard makes terrible choices, but the crowd outside becomes even more frightening. One man's crime is transformed into entertainment, and an entire community loses its humanity while demanding justice. Which of these forgotten noir classics left the darkest impression on you? These films were made under strict studio rules, yet they still explored corruption, guilt, fear, broken families, and crowds hungry for punishment. That may be why they remain so unsettling today. Share your favorite in the comments. Like the video, and subscribe for more forgotten movies that Hollywood rarely discusses anymore.